Alrighty. So, hey y'all. I know we're cramped. Okay, obviously this is not ideal. I turned on the fan for the AC, so hopefully it doesn't get too toasty in here because we all know it could get very hot very quick. Um, so yeah, obviously this is not ideal. We're working on finding a way to grow, maybe expand this room or get something outside, something. Because yeah, portable or something. Because yeah, this is it cramped? Maybe just a little bit, right? No, we're good, right? No.
It's better than
Um,
coach.
it's better than what?
Better than coach.
That's true. In the airline, that's true. So, my name's Lucas. I see a lot of new faces, which is great. Which is awesome because we started with like what, 6 people, 10 people, you know, and then now we're at where we're at, which is awesome. Thank God, because that's really incredible. Um, but we still have a lot of work. Our work never stops with that. Then, so we do have a couple of announcements, which I do want recorded. All right, so I do want people need to be able to see these. We still need a name, okay? Because our church name right now is in English Eternal Rock. It's what we got right now. The best option is Eternal Pebbles, right? So I mean, yeah, we're kind of lacking in the name department, in the marketing department. So for those of you watching online, please, if y'all have any ideas, please comment them because we are desperate. All right, we are desperate. We also have a Google Classroom. This is something that Johnny and I made a while ago. But you're part of it, right? So right here we have the classroom code. This is where we made this collectively. My idea, you agreed to it, so it's a team. This is where we post our PDFs for all of our slides. We download it and post it on here. Personally, as a student, I know it's very helpful. However, it does not replace this, okay? Because I'm going to go off script. If any of you know me, do I go off script?
Yes.
All the time. I find something and I remember it and I go off script and I talk about it. But that's not going to be on the PowerPoint. Okay, so you're going to lack information if you only rely on that. So please still be present. Okay, I do highly recommend that. But it's still good information if you miss or anything. You still have it. Okay. So that's that. I also want to inform you of our approach to this because a lot of you are very, very smart with this, very knowledgeable. Okay, some of you may not. Maybe some of you are new to this. It's okay. I was too. So I want to tell you our approach because some of those students who are very knowledgeable, like Shai and Andrew and such, you know a lot, right? So this might just be a review, but to those students who have no idea what's going on, that might be changing their world, and we're starting with the foundation. That's what we're doing. Okay, we're trying to build something towards something. So I know it might sound kind of elementary level for some of you. For some of those, it might be completely groundbreaking. Okay, that's our approach. We are trying to build a foundation with the context, with the methodology that Rico teaches, and trying to build something so that whenever we do go into, say, the Messianic Connections next year, makes sense. It makes a lot more sense because there's a lot that we will miss if we don't understand the context. Okay, so that's our approach. I also want to digest. I want you to be able to digest stuff, right? Imagine you sitting at a table, right? Is it easy to like eat an entire cheesecake? You laugh, but is it true? Like you can't, right? It's pretty hard. An entire cheesecake from Cheesecake Factory is very difficult to do. You could eat it. Can you digest it? That's a completely different question, right? Likewise, there you go, real quick. Roll back in. So, which is easier? A piece of cheesecake every day or an entire cheesecake in 20 minutes? Right? Which one are you going to digest? Right, so this year, we're working on really getting that foundation in and make it digestible. To make it digestible for you so that whenever we move on, we don't have to review as much. We will review, but we don't have to go back too much. Okay? That's our approach. All right. With that being said, we're going to go into it. Okay? So, excuse me while I do this because I have to do it twice. Okay? Let's do a recap of Vayechi. All right? Jacob and his family stays in Goshen. Now, for those of you who were here when I talked about Joseph, whenever they brought the family into Goshen, do you remember what the original land was? Go ahead. Yeah, it's the original part of Israel. Because the land of Israel stopped at the east of the Nile. Right? So really, Joseph brought his family into an original part of Israel. It's pretty neat to know. Joseph helped make the kingdom of Egypt belong to Pharaoh. Okay, because during that entire process, and actually at the end of the other portion as well, this also happened where people started selling their wealth for food. You know, remember that? They sold their cattle, their flocks, which is our equivalency of a house or cars, right? They sold their generational wealth, their land. And then they end up selling themselves to Pharaoh. So they're not free people anymore. Right now they are servants to Pharaoh, which is huge, 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 huge. Naturally, Pharaoh became very wealthy because he also had a tax of 20%, a fifth. Okay, nowadays it's like 27. Anyways, that's a different topic, different time. So yeah, naturally, Pharaoh became very wealthy because he literally owned all of Egypt except for which land? Y'all remember? Priests. Yes, the land of the priests. Okay, because that was given to them. Okay, we talked about royal grant covenants and such. Like legally, he can't take that land. Then we have the blessing of Ephraim and Manasseh, or Manasseh. How do you say it? I say it differently. Manasseh. I'm used to the Spanish dialect. So Manasseh. So we have the Ephraim and Manasseh. They switch. All right. Jacob blesses his sons, his other ones. Remember, because he doesn't just have Joseph, right? He has 12 total. Jacob dies and Joseph dies. Okay. We need to know Joseph dies before we start this portion. It gets restated in the beginning of Genesis, which is good because it reminds us, oh, Joseph is dead. Because we're going to have to know that the Pharaoh does not know Joseph. We're going to talk about that. Okay, but first, we have this YouTube video that our friend Rico Jr., which is Rico's son, he makes for us. It's called Torah and 10. They're really helpful for whenever we get started. So I might have to just use my audio. Do you want to hand me the mic for this? Because maybe we could get the audio for the video. Maybe. That way, this will work. All right, ready? So y'all gotta pay attention because it's hard to hear.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Torah in 10, your weekly dose of Torah in context in 10 minutes or less. This week's Parashah is Parashah Shemot, Exodus 1:1 to 6:1. Let's get started. Portion recap. Shemot is about the ending of one world, the beginning of a new. It does seem that way quite explicitly once we start reading the text. Throughout the first 6 chapters of Shemot, it has outlined the suffering of the Hebrews. Many years have passed since Joseph. We now have a Pharaoh that does not know Joseph. The terminology on that is a little cryptic, but as we move on, we'll hopefully shed some more light on what that means for Pharaoh to forget Joseph, or to not know Joseph. But at this current time, the Hebrews are being oppressed. They're being enslaved. They're being treated harshly. They're being treated like enemies in essentially their own home at this point, since they've been living there for hundreds of years. Things culminate with the killing of the firstborn of the Hebrews through the midwives and throwing into the river itself, leading to the saving of Moses by his mother, the finding of Moses by Pharaoh's daughter, and being raised by his own mother, ironically enough, in the house of Pharaoh. The house of Pharaoh has a lot of implications that no one really seems to speak about, in that Pharaoh taught Moses everything he would have taught his other sons: how to be influential politically, how to rule, how to be a royal, how to treat other royals, how to operate in this political sphere of influence that you would only find in the house of Pharaoh or in the house of the other kings of that time. So Moses is being put in a really unique position so that when he returns, he'll know the protocol and he'll know how to operate in this murky world of ancient intrigue and political dissidence. That's what's going on right now in Egypt and, in fact, all over the world. However, that's getting a little ahead of ourselves. At this current time, the children of Israel are being oppressed. Moses is raised up. He kills one of the Egyptians that's beating one of the Hebrews, and then flees because Pharaoh explicitly says he wants to kill Moses. So he flees from Egypt into the wilderness, meets his wife. He essentially lives his entire life out there. He's an old man by the time that Hashem calls out to him via the burning bush. So this is just another example of how God doesn't necessarily need everybody in their youth, in their prime. Moses needed to go into the wilderness, maybe to unlearn many things he had learned, many bad habits from the Egyptians, to learn humbleness, to learn humility. And I think those qualities are what set him apart, so that Hashem chose him to come back to now set his people free. since now he's had the experience of living outside of the civilized world in the wilderness, which is something they'll have to know coming up pretty soon. Did you know that by this point in time, nearly the full 430 years have passed since the Hebrews moved into Egypt? The city of Pithom was built on top of an older Hyksos outpost. Ramesses was intentionally built near the ancient Hyksos capital of Avaris. During that time, the ancient world grew more interconnected and globalized, if you will. Archaeologists are still learning how interdependent these empires were on each other through evidence of their advanced trade and immigration. Carbon dating of ancient pollen samples show intense periods of drought and famine in Anatolia or Turkey, the Levant, Canaan, and even into Egypt. And paleoseismology from the surrounding regions of the Mediterranean show intense and catastrophic earthquake activity during an extremely short span of time. Really mysterious what's kind of going on, but it's all going to pull together soon. Beyond the events of Shemot, after hundreds of years of stability in the region, several empires begin to experience civil upheaval in their borders and internally. As issues compound on the global trade system, it becomes more and more difficult for each empire to support each other as they previously did in their interconnected web of alliances and trade agreements. The ancient world order is in an extremely delicate balance, just as Moshe is called to return to Egypt by Hashem. Question time. What time period do you think the Exodus took place? Who do you believe was the Pharaoh at that time? And give me one example in the text of righteousness and justice in this portion. Good luck, good studying, and Shabbat Shalom, everybody.
Don't look at my stuff. Actually, I don't even know what that stuff is. It's probably like music playlists and stuff like that. Here you go. So, okay. I forget how this works. So on mine, it's different than this one because there's actually two different links because I had to drag this one over. So I have to like constantly make sure I'm on the same page. So that being said, we're going to talk about today's themes. Okay. We could sit here for hours and hours and hours talking about this portion. Easily. But is that digestible? No. Okay. That's why I picked a couple themes that I want to talk about to lay the foundation for next year. Okay. So we're going to talk about not knowing Joseph. That's important for chapter 1, verse 8, when it says the new king over Egypt did not know Joseph. We're going to talk about what that means, okay? You're right. It is cryptic. He was right. But we'll talk about that, okay? We're going to talk about what a righteous king does, what it means to be a righteous king, okay? We're going to talk about the Nile River, why Pharaoh chose the Nile to throw all the babies in. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about Moses. Who is this guy? A lot of people don't know a lot about Moses, which is important because he's a type and shadow of the Messiah. So you have to talk about that. We're going to talk about Pharaoh wanting to kill Moses. We're going to talk about why that was pretty extreme. And we're also going to talk about adoption. Moses gets adopted twice. Not just once, twice. We're going to talk about that. Okay. We're going to talk about sandals. Y'all remember when we talked about sandals, when we talked about Abraham? Right? It's more about authority and respect over the land. Okay, we're going to talk about that, which is why God tells Abraham to go walk over the land. Establish your authority. This is your land, okay? We're going to talk about what milk and honey means, and then we're going to talk about the signs of Moses. Y'all know the three that God told Moses to do? Which ones? Right, the leper's hand, yes. The skin disease, which one? The staff turning into a snake. What's the other one?
Water to blood.
Yes, water to blood. Good job. We're going to talk about Pharaoh's heart and why that's important, okay? Because sometimes God hardens it, and then sometimes Pharaoh does it himself. Okay, we're going to talk about what that means. We're going to talk about why God wanted to kill Moses. Did y'all know that? Some of you, yeah, right? Okay, good. Pretty half, about half. So, and then we're going to talk about laziness. It's kind of weird, right? How many of you, whenever you're asked to work, you say, I can't because of the Shabbat? How often do you get called lazy? I get called lazy all the time. Right? Because you don't want to work on Sabbath? That's weird, right? That is completely counterculture, right? So yeah, we get called lazy because we have a Sabbath, okay? Which is why a lot of people crash and burn. I don't know what this is. Yes, I do. No, I do. Let me get there from here. All right, so we're going to go ahead and do the blessing of the Torah, okay? I'm not going to bother doing the Hebrew because I'm still practicing that, so I'm going to butcher it, and I don't want to offend anybody. Okay, if that other guy was here, he could have done it, man. That was awesome. So I'll go ahead and do it in English. Bless Adonai who is blessed. Blessed is Adonai who is blessed now and forever. Blessed are you, Adonai our God, sovereign of the universe, who has chosen us from among the peoples and given us the Torah. Blessed are you, Adonai, who gives the Torah. Thank you. All right, so we're going to talk. Oh, okay. It's not on here. This is so weird. Let's talk about chapter 1. Okay. For those of you who know me, I break it up into chapters. We talk about the context. Okay, I'll go ahead and read it today because I don't want everybody reading. Okay, it's okay. And then we do a recap, review questions, and then we move on. Okay, because I don't want to leave you all too far. Okay. All right, I'll go ahead and read. So these are the names of the sons of Israel who came into Egypt with Jacob, each with his household: Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah, Issachar, Zebulun, Benjamin. Where's Benjamin? There you go. Benjamin, Dan, Naphtali, Gad, and Asher. All the descendants of Jacob were 70 persons. Joseph was already in Egypt when then Joseph died. It's reminding us Joseph is long gone. Okay, and all his brothers and all that generation. But it's an entire generation. Like, it's not like 10 years ago he died. Like, this is a long time ago. But the people of Israel were fruitful and increased greatly. They multiplied and grew exceedingly strong, so that the land was filled with them. Which is awesome because, one, they're an original land of Israel, which is awesome, okay? Because we do have the mandate to grow and multiply. But, I had a thought. Oh, a lot of times the people of Israel are used as a metaphor. Fish is used as a metaphor for the people of Israel. Just know that, because fish grow, multiply really fast. Okay, just bear that in mind. Okay, it's not really applicable today, but in the future it will. So I have to do this twice. Okay, no, go back. So now there arose a new king over Egypt who did not know Joseph. That's so weird. It's like the author knew. Listen, the readers know that Joseph died a long time ago. I mean, that's pretty self-explanatory, don't you think? Like, a new king over Egypt, obviously they would not know Joseph. But what did Joseph stand for? It's more important than just the person. Right? Obviously he doesn't know Joseph, but he doesn't know what Joseph stands for. Was Joseph a righteous man? Was he God-fearing? Did he serve the Lord? Right? Was he just? And he practiced good righteousness and justice? Yeah. Well, if the Pharaoh doesn't know that, how do you think the Pharaoh is going to be? Right? We'll talk about that. So, and a lot of times it was said to me that I say, we'll talk about that, and we never do, because I forget. I promise we will. Okay. Also, forgot to mention this. Last week we had the clipboards. We had 2 sheets of paper. I have ADD, so I'm bouncing all over the place. Okay. Those clipboards, we did 2 sheets last week, but a lot of actually pretty much all the clipboards just handed one back. So I just figured we could just use one. Okay. So that way we save paper and stuff. That's free for you to use to take notes if you want to. It's not required by any means. But yeah, I would like you to. But anyways. So, moving on. They did not know Joseph. And he said to his people, "Behold, the people of Israel are too many and too mighty for us. Come, let us deal shrewdly with them." Do you know what that means? Shrewd. Like harsh, kind of, in a way, right? Unless they multiply. And if war breaks out, they will join our enemies and fight against us and escape from the land. Therefore, they set taskmasters over them to afflict them with heavy burdens. They built for Pharaoh store cities, Pithom and Ramses, which Rico Jr. mentioned in the video. Right, those are cities. But the more they were oppressed, the more they multiplied. I think that's really interesting. The more they were oppressed, the more they multiplied, which is exactly the problem that they didn't want that to happen. Okay. Where am I? Oh yeah, okay. The more they were oppressed, the more they multiplied, and the more they spread abroad. They took more land. And the Egyptians were in dread of the people of Israel, so they ruthlessly made the people of Israel work as slaves and made their lives bitter with hard service and mortar and brick. So they were basically construction workers, all of them. Okay, and in all kinds of work in the field, in all their work, they ruthlessly made them work as slaves. Where's my mouse? I can't see it. I know it's there. Oh, there we go. All right, so let's talk about knowing Joseph. Joseph was righteous. He served God. He practiced justice. And he was a liberator for Israel. Okay? Now, let's talk about Pharaoh. Pharaoh was not righteous. He did not serve God. He was unjust, and he was an oppressor. So he crushed the people of Israel. But what happened whenever he crushed the people of Israel? Bounced back, right? They ended up growing with more numbers. That's what it means to, like, not know. Obviously, there's a lot more that we can talk about. Okay? With that. It's a lot more cryptic than it is. But That's the foundation that we need to work on. Okay, not knowing somebody can also signify you don't know what they stand for. You don't recognize who they serve, and we'll talk about that actually soon. I promise we will. Okay, we'll talk about that because the Pharaoh literally says, "I do not know who your Lord is." If he didn't know the Lord, that obviously means that he also doesn't know Joseph. Okay, so let's move on. Let's talk about what a righteous king would do. Okay, my list. This is like half my list. Okay, I have a lot. Okay, Rico gave us a lot of information on what a righteous king would do in a land whenever they take office. Okay, so a righteous king, obviously, not an oppressor. Okay, not an oppressor. We think of Joseph as righteous. Was he an oppressor? No, quite the complete opposite. Was he just? Yes. Okay. So if you're a righteous king, you're not an oppressor. You're not unjust. Okay. Obviously, he punished when he had to punish, and he rewarded when he had to reward. Okay. Liberations of slaves and freeing prisoners. Does that sound like this Pharaoh? No, right? A job of a righteous king is to liberate the slaves and free the prisoners. Hello? I mean, who just became slaves? Right? Israel. So he took slaves, okay? But God also liberates us and frees us as slaves, correct? Okay, so a small thank you would be to learn and share the commandments. Right? Just a small, tiny, actually the very least we could do. Okay? Restores the land and inheritance to the original owners. Did Pharaoh do that? No, we do not do that. Establish laws to protect the less fortunate. Oh, that's awkward. Did he do that? No, a righteous king would take care of his kingdom. Right? That's why pharaohs are also called everlasting father, because they're father of the kingdom. Okay? This pharaoh did not do that, actually. He did not take care of the less fortunate. Okay? He's very what we call prideful. Okay? We're going to talk about that whenever we talk about the leprous hand, which is one of the signs that Moses was told to do. Okay, we're going to talk about why that's important. He also should be in charge of restoring the temple. Right? That's important. We're going to... Go ahead, yeah.
Because all these things that he would do, the righteous king, this is when he just became the new king.
Exactly. Yeah, that's what he's supposed to do whenever he takes off.
He used to do it back then. All the kings would do it.
Yeah.
Because that's how they would show the righteousness, just to get people to like him. So the fact that he became the new king, he didn't do these things.
Yeah.
Shows you that he was very
unjust, very unrighteous, right? Well, we could keep going. The elimination of exploitation. This is exploitation. What he's doing with Israel right now, that's exploitation. The current, I guess, a modern way of saying that would be like human trafficking, right? Getting rid of that would be an elimination of exploitation. Okay. Then we have punishment of exploiters. It can't just be you end the exploitation. Then what? The guys that are guilty go free. No, you got to punish them too. Okay, that's called justice. Okay, the righteousness and justice go hand in hand. All right. Then we have equality for all people. It does not sound like all people have equality under this new Pharaoh. Okay? So I'll continue. So then, the king of Egypt, the Pharaoh, said to the Hebrew midwives, y'all know what a midwife is by any chance? Raise your hand if you do. All right, so there's some that don't. So a midwife is the person that takes care of, like, having the baby. Okay? So, said to the Hebrew midwives, one of whom was named Shifra and the other Puah. When you serve as midwife, so whenever you're taking care of the baby during birth, to a Hebrew woman or to the Hebrew women, and see them on the birth stool. Oh, we could talk about birth stool a long time, but we're not going to get into that this year. Well, actually, maybe we can eventually. Maybe. Anyways, not today. We won't today. So the midwives on the birth stool. If it is a son, you shall kill him. But if I don't know why my accent just came out like that, but you shall kill him. But if it is a daughter, she shall live. So, he's playing divine judgment right now. Pharaoh's saying who can live, who can die, right? That's also birth stool. That's important too, okay? Being on the birth stool is like new creation. We could talk about that later, okay? But yeah, he put himself in this position of God to say who can live, who can die. All right, but the midwives feared God, and they did not do as the king of Egypt commanded them, but let the male children live. So the king of Egypt called the midwives. Who are the midwives? The people that took care of the babies during birth. All right, sweet. and said to them, "Why have you done this, and let the male children live?" The midwife said to Pharaoh, "Because the Hebrew women are not like the Egyptian women, for they are vigorous and give birth before the midwife comes to them." So basically, hey, the baby's already born. What do you want us to do? Right? So God dealt well with the midwives, and the people multiplied and grew very strong. And because the midwives feared God, they gave them families. Now, families are important in the ancient Near East. Okay, that's a sign of honor. The more children you have, the more opportunities for wealth, the more opportunities for to ascribe honor from other people. Okay, so families are very important. It's actually quite the blessing to have a family. Even today, it's a blessing. Then Pharaoh commanded all of his people, "Every son that is born to the Hebrews you shall cast into the Nile, but you shall let every daughter live." Let's talk about the Nile. So the Nile, they thought of it as a precious gift from their gods. Okay, it is the guarantee of Egyptian fertility and prosperity, mainly because they believed it was the personification of the Egyptian god Hapi, which is one of the gods of fertility. Okay. Ironically, though, Pharaoh uses it to stop the fertility of Israelites. Right. So Nile, it's kind of. I also, you can add to it as well with kind of like, I forget how it goes. Yeah, the judgment.
Yeah, we do technical.
It would what?
People up from the water.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Can you speak on that a little bit? Because I forget.
Because back then in the ancient Near East, what they used to do, let's say I accused Lucas of something.
Mm-hmm.
So we would have a trial. So they would tie up Lucas and throw him in the river. And if Lucas comes out, that means the god of the river finds him just.
Yep.
Obviously, if you tie somebody up and throw them in the river, they're gonna die. There
Yeah.
was a king that had like 10 professional swimmers for him. So every time they accuse a king, he would have the professional swimmers swim in the river. Yeah. But then one time, one of them drowned him and they had to kill him. Because that's also the rules. If Lucas lives, comes out of the river, now I have to die. And then my stuff goes to him. And that's going to be very important to the whole story of Exodus. Because you see it all tying together. It's not that God follows that, but he's using that type of language of the law that they understand against him.
Yeah, thank you, because I forgot all about that. So I knew the idea, I just couldn't, expand on it. So the Nile, precious gift from their gods, personification of the fertility god Hapi. Okay, and then Pharaoh uses it to stop the fertility of the Israelites. Okay, it's called irony. All right, we're good. Let's do some review questions. Okay. So, is practicing fair justice a trait of a righteous king? I want everybody. Yeah. Yes, it is. All right. By saying that the new Pharaoh did not know Joseph, what does that exactly imply? That he's not righteous. He doesn't serve God. He doesn't know of God. Right? He's unjust. He's not fair. And he's an oppressor, right? All right. Sweet. Somebody, raise your hand. List a trait of a righteous king. Go ahead. A liberator. Yeah, stands up for his people, takes care of his kingdom. Go ahead, Benjamin. Justice. Yeah, fair. Go ahead.
Equality.
Equality. Good. Oh, man. Everybody said equality. All right. Number 4. What was the symbol of the Egyptian fertility and prosperity in Egypt? The Nile. The Nile River. Good. Good job. All right. We're going to go on to chapter 2. Oh, sorry. This is English. 2. Okay. We're going to go to chapter 2. All right. So, I'm actually not bilingual whatsoever. Okay, ask my wife. So, now a man from the house of Levi, this is going to be actually really important in the future. Okay, now a man from the house of Levi went and took as his wife a Levite woman. Okay, let me reread that. So, let me retry. Now a man from the house of Levi went and took as his wife a Levite woman. Okay, tongue twister. Moses is a Levite. Write that down. Moses is a Levite. We have to know that in the future. It's going to be so important. Okay? Moses was a Levite. The woman conceived and bore a son, and when she saw that he was a fine child, she hid him 3 months. Okay, so she got away with it for 3 months. When she could hide him no longer, she took for him a basket made of bulrushes and daubed it with bitumen and pitch, basically clay. Okay, rub clay on it to basically waterproof it. She put the child in it and placed it among the reeds by the riverbank. Okay, so basically, it's kind of funny. It's like you put it in. Have y'all ever been to like a lake or a river or something? Right? Whenever you go fishing and then you catch a fish and then you try to reel it over the reeds, can you do that very well? No, it's pretty inaccessible, right? So if you place a baby inside the reeds, where's the baby going? Nowhere for a while. Okay, so she's kind of protecting it. Okay, so there we go. And his sister stood at a distance to know what would be done to him. Now the daughter of Pharaoh came down to bathe at the river, while her young women walked beside the river. She saw the basket among the reeds and sent her servant woman, and she took it. So they saw Moses in the riverbank. All right. Wait a second. Oh, this is throwing me off. Okay. All right. So a hero. This is very reminiscent of a lot of literature, because whenever a woman would have a baby and would save the baby would oftentimes turn out to be a hero of some kind. Okay, we see that a lot in ancient literature. Okay, so a mother saving the child, think of hero immediately. Okay, it's a common theme in literature. It gives the reader an idea. It actually, if you're familiar with that theme, you would kind of have an idea of the outcome of Moses. Go ahead. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. No, not Batman. Too soon. Too soon. Go ahead, Jesse. You had a question? No, Benjamin. No, you're just yelling at me for that one. My bad. My bad. So it gives you a reader an idea of what would happen to Moses in the future. Okay, if you're familiar with that, like Superman. Okay, not Batman. So we also see it similar with the myth of Horus in the legend of Sargon, which we'll talk about right now. Nope. Okay, go back. Now. Oh, no, go back. There we go. Myth of Horus. Let's talk about that. So basically how it goes, this is a watered down version, obviously. Okay, Osiris is the Egyptian god of the underworld. Okay, Osiris and Isis, the goddess of fertility, have a baby. Okay, well actually, and then Horus, yeah, so to have a child, Horus, okay, that's a son. Seth, the god of disorder, tries to kill Horus. But before this, I forgot to put it on the slide, Seth, the god of disorder, kills Osiris. Dun, dun, dun. And then Osiris resurrects Osiris. Oh, wait, no, Isis. Oh, let me start over. Osiris. I'm sorry, these names are confusing, y'all. No, so Osiris, the god of the underworld, gets killed by Seth. Okay, just, you know what? Don't read this. Look at me. So, Osiris, the god of the underworld, and Isis have a baby. What's that baby's name? Horus. Okay, and then Seth, the god of what? Disorder, kills Osiris, the god of the underworld. Okay, and then Isis, the goddess of fertility, resurrects Osiris. Now they're just a happy family again. Okay, but then Seth, the god of disorder, tries to kill Horus. Like, yo, come on, dude, chill. But Isis hides Horus in the marshlands of the Delta. Okay, the Delta is formed by the Nile also. Okay, so we see that kind of parallel with Moses being hidden in the reeds of the Nile. Horus was also hidden by Isis in the Delta. Okay, Horus survives. Okay, Horus grows up and seeks revenge against Seth, the god of disorder. Good, y'all are so smart. Okay, so what was a myth to Egypt was a reality to Israel. Right? That's Egyptian mythology. But we can see in the life of Moses that kind of actually happened. Does Moses take revenge? Well, it's not Moses per se, but like in theory, in an idea, hypothetically, did Moses take revenge against Egypt? In a way, we'll read about that. I know it's kind of confusing. Okay, this is the watered down version, trust me. Okay, so Osiris and Isis have a baby called Horus. Who's killed by Seth? Osiris. Who resurrects Osiris? Isis. And then who tries to kill Horus? Seth, the god of disorder. Okay. Where does Isis hide Horus? Of the delta. And what also forms the delta? What river? The Nile. Right? So you're starting to see the parallels here. Okay. So again, Horus survives. Moses survives. Horus grows up and seeks revenge against Seth. Moses doesn't exactly want to have revenge against Egypt, but that's actually just kind of what happens. Okay, because God's people are being oppressed and slaves, right? God doesn't like that, and we also see that God uses Israel as uses the firstborn for a metaphor for Israel too. Okay, which is really important because we're going to see that Moses wanted to kill God because of the firstborn, and then, or sorry, no. God wanted to kill Moses. What's up with me? And then we also see that God kills the firstborn in Egypt. So it's important. The firstborn, you're going to have to know that, okay? So it's myth to Egypt, but it's reality for Israel, okay? This also may be used as evidence against Egyptian myth, don't you think? God's kind of using that to be like, no, that's not true, okay? So let's talk about the legend of Sargon. Okay, sweet. So Sargon was a Mesopotamian king around 2300 BC, okay, before the Common Era. Or before Christ. I guess BC is before Christ, right? Not before Common Era. Yeah, I'm trying. I'm trying to get a beard like that. My wife won't let me. So we have. I couldn't even grow it if I wanted to. So let's be real. So we have similarities. Okay. We also see a reed basket, and he's adopted out of the water. Okay, that's the legend of Sargon. We see the similarities. That's the similarities between him and Moses. Okay. Now, a lot of times, people, whenever we read in history, and in literature and archaeology, similarities in the ancient Near East, in the Mesopotamian area, and Scripture, they say, oh, well, the Bible's just copied. Is that true?
No.
No, it's not copied. It's just common. Okay, God uses language that we are familiar with, right? Well, not us today, obviously, because it's like, what, thousands and thousands of years ago. But language they were familiar with, they understood. They understood what was happening, okay? Especially when we talk about royal language, which confuses so many people. All right, so we need to understand the difference. So those are similarities between those two stories and Moses. Okay, so keep in mind what just happened. Before this, they found the basket with Moses. Okay, when she opened it, she saw the child, and behold, the baby was crying. Yeah, it's in a clay basket in the river. I would be crying too. So she took pity on him and said, "This is the one of Hebrews' children." Then his sisters said to Pharaoh's daughter, "Shall I go and call you a nurse from the Hebrew women to nurse the child for you?" And Pharaoh's daughter said to her, "Go." Okay, so the girl went and called the child's mother. And Pharaoh's daughter said to her, "Take this child away and nurse him for me, and I will give you your wages." Their wages were typically just food and water, or I'm sorry, food and clothing. All right, it's just the basic necessities. It's not like a surrogate today where they get paid pretty good money, right? So it's just very basic necessities. Okay. I'll give you your wages. So the woman took the child and nursed him. It's kind of sad, don't you think? Like that's I couldn't imagine being put in that situation. All right. And then when the child grew older, she brought him to Pharaoh's daughter, and he became her son. She named him Moses. Now this is important in adoption. Okay, we talked about this whenever we talked about Jacob and Laban. Okay. It's also we're going to see that a lot whenever we talk about Yeshua and Joseph. Okay, he's adopted by Joseph, right? But what has to happen, like, to really legally seal the deal in adoption? Don't say it. What is it? What just happened? What has to legally happen, like, to make it legally binding? What has to happen for adoption? Marcus? Sorry, he was raising his hand the whole time. Name. You have to name the child, right? Go ahead.
And you have to say my son.
Yep. So, and he became her son. She named him Moses. We already see its adoption language. Okay, she took him as her son. Okay, legally that's binding, and she named him legally. That's binding for adoption. Okay, because she said, "I drew him out of the water." All right. Alrighty. So let's move on. Oh my gosh, where's my mouse? Okay. One day, When Moses had grown up, his grown man, he went out to his people and looked on their burdens. I think it's interesting that he knows, he knows that he's a Hebrew, that he knows he's an Israelite. That's cool. Looked on their burdens and saw an Egyptian beating a Hebrew, one of his people. He looked this way and that, so he looked around, he saw no one and struck down the Egyptian. He killed the guy. He struck down the Egyptian and hit him in the sand. Now, I remember reading this a couple of years ago. I'm like, oh, so he just committed murder, right? But what's murder? Unlawful killing.
That was premeditated.
Also premeditated. That's first degree. That's different degrees. So he looked around, but he saw that the Egyptian was beating a Hebrew. All right. But yeah, more on that. Not this year. I don't have much on it this year. Okay. When he went out the next day, behold, two Hebrews were struggling together. And he said to the man in the wrong, "Why do you strike your companion?" Think about this. Or actually, let me read. He answered, "Who made you a prince and judge over us? Do you mean to kill me as you killed the Egyptian?" Let's read what he asked. He said, "Why do you strike your companion?" In the eyes of the Hebrews right now, the Israelites, what did Moses do to his companion? Strike his companion. Right? So here, it looks like Moses is a hypocrite. He's like, how come you just struck? No, not stroke. Struck. All right, thank you. Struck his companion, right? It looks like a hypocrite in the eyes of these people, right? He answered, "Who made you prince and judge over us? What do you mean to kill me as you kill the Egyptian?" Then Moses was afraid and thought, surely the thing is known. Yeah, people talk. When Pharaoh heard of it, he sought to kill Moses. This is interesting. So, I'm vaguely familiar with it, so I apologize if I'm incorrect. Don't quote me on it. Okay, but there are laws for if you do kill a slave. Because keep in mind, are the Egyptians free? No, they are servants to Pharaoh. So technically, they're slaves to Pharaoh. So if somebody kills a slave, he owes the slave owner a fine. He has to pay the slave owner. So the fact that Pharaoh wants to kill him is quite dramatic. What's the word? It's not excessive. It's excessive. It's pretty excessive, right? It's over the top for what it should have been. Okay, so Pharaoh wasn't interested in justice. He wanted revenge. Okay, so he sought to kill Moses. When Pharaoh heard of it, he sought to kill Moses. But Moses fled from Pharaoh and stayed in the land of Midian. Oh, I forgot to put the map. Okay, but he sat down by a well. So 2 pieces of information. Midian, if you remember, if you could visualize, a lot of people can't do that, but like, imagine real quick, like this half is Egypt. Okay, you have a sea here. Okay, there's Egypt. Right over that and over here is Midian. So it's not too far. Okay, it's not too far away. Okay, so he goes to Midian, and he sat down by a well. Oh boy, you'll have a lot of information for you coming up. Okay, who also sat by a well? Yeshua, yes. But not too long ago, we talked about a particular person.
His name, but he went to find a wife for Isaac.
Oh yeah, he did that too. Yeah, right. He did that too. Not who I had in mind, but that's true. Okay, who else? Who else? His dad, Joseph's dad. Jacob. Yeah, he sat by a well, right? So it seems a lot of times, whenever you sit by a well, you find a wife. So fellas, just kidding. All right, so. No, you're too young for wives. So let me get a sip of water. Go ahead, Jesse. Too young. So now the priest of Midian had 7 daughters. This is important, okay? Because we're going to see a parallel between Jacob. I want you to be thinking of this when we read it. Okay? We're going to see parallels between Jacob and Moses right now. Okay? Remember when we talked about why would we see a female shepherd? They had no sons. That's what you were going to say. I'll add one, right? It's also a good way to find a husband. Okay? It's a good way to find a husband. And if you had no sons, you had no choice. So, now the priest, ladies, you could be a shepherdess, okay? Now the priest of Midian had 7 daughters, and they came down and drew water and filled the trough to water their father's flock. So right away we see that their father has no sons, okay? That's really it. That's all we see right now. The shepherds came and drove them away, meaning the women. But Moses stood up and saved them and watered their flock. So it's interesting. We see kind of a disagreement between the water source and the shepherds and the shepherdesses. Yeah, but female shepherdesses. Okay, so moving on. We see that, and also with, remember we talked about Jacob? Whenever we talked about Jacob, we talked about the source of the water. Did they ever oftentimes agree on that? No. So what did they do? They covered it, right? They had to cover it to make sure that everybody was there so they could all see that they were taking water within their agreement. Okay? We can see here that they're not agreeing to anything. Okay? So, when they, meaning the women, when the daughters came home to their father Reuel, he said, "How is it you have come home so soon?" Okay? They said, "An Egyptian delivered us out of the hands of the shepherds and even drew water for us and watered the flock." Oh, that sounds interesting, right? Does that sound familiar? That's exactly what Jacob did. Okay? You see that? It's interesting. Why do you think they said an Egyptian?
He's probably still.
Go ahead.
He's probably like wearing Egyptian clothing or
Right.
Like
Still shaven.
yeah.
Right. Go ahead. He's buff. Is that what you said? He's buff. All right. Hey, I mean, maybe, maybe. Right. So yeah, he's dressed like an Egyptian. He looks like an Egyptian. He probably speaks like an Egyptian. Right. So he looks Egyptian. Okay. How else would you know? That we may eat bread. When you see eating bread, immediately what one word comes to mind? Marriage, sure. Yeah. But what is a marriage? Covenant. Yeah, you see eating bread, immediately think covenant. Okay, they're coming into covenant together. Why would they, right now in this context, let me reel you all back in real quick. Why would they be eating bread? What kind of covenant would they come into? What kind of agreement? Did you say what kind of bread? I mean, maybe. Go ahead, Marcus. Adoption. Right now, they're coming into agreement for adoption. Okay, because who does not have a son right now? Their dad, Jethro, Reuel. Yeah, we'll talk about that. Actually, no, we will not talk about that today. Okay, bro. So, Egyptian. That we may eat bread. We also see that with Jacob and Laban. Okay, and Moses was content to dwell with the man. What does to dwell mean in this context? To dwell. What does that mean in this context? To stay. To stay. So right away we see he's happy to stay with the man. And they just ate bread. The guy has no sons. What do you think of? Adoption. Okay? That's using adoption language. Okay? And he gave Moses his daughter Zipporah. This is what seals the deal. Hey y'all, come back. Yeah, y'all are recorded, so don't look like that, alright? I already made a fool myself. Okay? I do it well. I'm a pro at that. So we see something that seals the deal with adoption. What might that be? What was Jacob promised? A wife. Yes, a wife. What was Moses just given?
A wife.
Legally, he had to. He had to. Okay? But what do y'all remember? What would happen if Moses took another wife? Remember the Code of Hammurabi? He would lose the right to inheritance. Good. So, she gave birth to a son, and he called his name Gershom, for he said, "I have been a sojourner in a foreign land." You know, I feared that I might move on here and not here, so just let me know, okay? Because I have to double click everything. Let's talk about adoption, okay? Moses was adopted twice now, okay? We see once by Pharaoh's daughter, and then by his father-in-law, okay? We see the same language used with Jacob and Laban whenever we talk about adoption, okay? Because same thing, Laban didn't have any sons. How do you know? Who was taking care of the flocks? His daughters. And so immediately you think, okay, they have no sons. Okay, what's going to follow suit? most likely adoption. Okay? We see the elements of a covenant, right? We see eating bread, breaking bread. Okay, that's why on Shabbat, a lot of people do the tradition where you break bread and stuff, sign of the covenant. Who else broke bread? Actually, I think Jacob and Laban ate a meal, right?
Yeshua.
Yeah, Yeshua broke bread at Passover. Okay. Yeah, so that's a sign of a covenant, whenever you see that. We see elements of adoption. We see that Moses was content with dwelling with a man. A lot of people are like, oh, so that's cohabitation? No. No. He was adopted into the family. Legally, Jethro had to give him a wife. Okay? All right. I kind of asked this too soon, but can someone tell me who else had a similar situation in the Bible? You already talked about it. You should know. Marcus. Jacob. Somebody else tell me. I want you to repeat the name. I want it to stick with you. Somebody who's
Jacob.
first time. Somebody who's first time. Don't know who you are. Say Jacob. Say it with me. Jacob. I want you all out of your shell, okay? I like to discuss. I like to banter. I like to chat with you, okay? So, adoption. All right, so during those many days, the king of Egypt died. Okay, the one that wanted him dead died. The one that turned Israel into slaves died. Okay, and then the people of Israel groaned because of their slavery and cried out for help. So the new Pharaoh, was he righteous too? No, he didn't free them. He didn't get rid of slavery and give them their rightful land. Because keep in mind, the Israelites owned that land that they were in. They had to, because Pharaoh, the Pharaoh that was with Joseph, thought he was a priest. So he gave them the land. That's why they were able to acquire property when everyone else was selling theirs.
It was a royal grant.
It was a royal grant. We talked about that too. The first day we did this, we talked about royal grant covenants. He cannot take it back. Okay? So, the new Pharaoh wasn't righteous either. All right? And the people of Israel groaned because of their slavery and cried out for help. Their cry for rescue from slavery came up to God. And God heard their groaning, and God remembered his covenant with Abraham, with Isaac, and with Jacob. God saw the people of Israel, and God knew. It's very deep. We could talk about this for a long time. Okay, just to recap, God made a covenant, pretty much a very similar covenant with all three of them. Okay, Abraham, that he would have descendants as numerous as the stars, that he would also have that land. Isaac, pretty much the same thing. Jacob, pretty much the same thing. Okay? All right, so God saw the people of Israel, and he knew. All right? Wait. Okay, it's not on here. Okay. So, chapter 2 review question. What legend? When I wrote that question, I actually did not add myth of Horus in there. Okay, but actually, technically, is a myth a legend?
Yeah.
Okay, so which legends can we find parallels to with the upbringing of Moses? Yes. Yeah. There's another one. Somebody.
Horus.
Myth of Horus, right? Yes. Okay, good. I'm glad we're all in agreement. How many times has Moses been adopted thus far?
Twice.
Twice. Good. Good. By whom?
Pharaoh
And father-in-law, Jethro. Good. Oh, actually, I forgot I even added that question. Okay. How do we know Moses was adopted by his father-in-law?
Bread.
Broke bread. Who is content to dwell?
He told him.
What?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that too. That too. And what about the wife? I should have added the code of Hammurabi, the codes into the laws. That would have helped. But legally, Jethro had to give him a wife to seal the deal, okay? So, we're going to... Go ahead.
Okay, add something though?
Sure. Yeah.
Remember I talked about that back then with the river, they used to judge people?
Yeah.
So what happened with Israelite babies? They threw them in the Nile.
Yeah.
So Pharaoh is making this accusation against the babies.
Mm-hmm.
But then you have Moses that lives. Remember what I said, that if a person lives, now that flips back the accusation. So now the Pharaoh in Egypt is the one that gets judged. And that's basically God establishing like a legal president to get back at Egypt. And that's what sets up the rest of Exodus.
Mm-hmm.
That's very important for you guys to...
Yep. Thank you. Thank you. So, moving on to chapter 3 now. Okay? This is a long one. We have 5 full chapters, but luckily the chapters aren't too long. Okay? Now, Moses was keeping the flock of his father-in-law, who also kept the flock of his father-in-law. Everybody say it.
Rachel.
Well, yeah, Jacob. So Jacob also took care of the flocks. Why? Why would he? Think of it as that's his inheritance. He's taking care of his stuff. Okay? So, it's important that we also know that Jethro is a priest. Okay? Which is going to come in handy in the future. Okay? And he led his flock to the west side of the wilderness and came to Horeb, the mountain of God. It's also, I have to do more research on it. Because a lot of times it said that Horeb might be Mount Sinai. You might know more about that than I do. Yeah, because that's where they go after Egypt. It has a different name, but it's the same mountain. Okay. And the angel of the Lord appeared to him in a flame and fire out the midst of a bush. He looked. All right, tell me, what happens if you light a bush on fire? It's gonna burn up. Yeah, that's what fire does. Okay. He looked and behold, the bush was burning, yet it was not consumed. What does that mean? What does that mean? It was still there. It didn't burn up. Okay. So, I lost my place. Verse 3. And Moses said, I will turn aside to see this great sight, why the bush is not burned. What? How proper. What a sight that is. Let me go see. Right? That's so funny. When the Lord, think about it. That's so weird. It's like watching a house on fire and it doesn't burn down.
First of all, random bush.
Oh, yeah, that too. That's kind of bizarre. It's like, yeah, it's like, oh, well, that's kind of weird. Anyways. And when the Lord saw that he turned aside to see, God called to him out of the bush, Moses, Moses. He said, here I am. I want to talk about that. Whenever he said, here I am, what do you think that means? It's like, oh, yeah, I'm here. I'm present. Well, what does it mean? Oh, yeah. That's true. But what did it mean? I am here and I will do everything you say. Already. I agree. You don't have to say anything. It's done. That's what that means.
You know that happens with the prophet Samuel?
Really?
Yeah, when they call his name, they're asking, is Samuel or? Yeah, Samuel.
Yeah.
Yes, Samuel. They were calling his name. Mm-hmm. He would go, I forgot who he was with. I don't remember the guy's name. But he heard his name at night, so he would ask him, like, hey, did you call me?
That's right.
And he said, next time you hear us say, here I am. Was that like what you said?
Oh, that's good. Go ahead.
That's because here I am, like the Hebrew word, I don't know how to pronounce it, but it's like hineni, and it's saying it every single time it's you can find it used in scripture. It's like an idiom for like I'm here and I'm ready to do whatever you ask me before you even ask. So it's not just like present.
Yeah.
It's like
I'm ready to serve you. Yeah. Very very good language. That. I said that. Oh my gosh. All right. So he said, here I am. Then he said, do not come near. Take your sandals off your feet. Why? Why would he ask him to do that?
Because it's holy ground.
It's holy ground. Thank you. And you definitely read ahead, cheater. All right. And the place on which you are standing is holy ground. Okay. And he said, I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. Okay. And Moses hid his face, for he was afraid to look at God. All right. So we talked about sandals a little bit. I have a slide for sandals. Yes, I do. Go ahead. So we have interesting language. Okay, we talked about why God told Abraham to go walk on the land. Why? Establish authority. That's his land. So whose land right now is Moses standing on? God's land. So he's like, hey, take off your shoes. There's also a lot of take off your feet. Take off your shoes.
Yes.
Right? All right. So also, whenever people would approach a king, right, towards the palace, towards the king, they would take off their shoes. Okay. Yeah. All right. So moving. I always forget which one it's on. So sandals. All right. So recall that walking on land indicated it belonged to you. Like it's like whenever you walk into a stranger's house or your friend's house or just a house that's not yours, and you walk in with your shoes on, what do they ask you?
Take it off.
Oh, they do ask you that, but what kind of sarcastic question would they ask Like, okay, no, that's a statement. Taking your socks off is a statement. No. What would they ask? Is this your house? I was told that. That's how I learned real quick. Right. So they say, is this your house? Does this house belong to you? No. So take off your shoes. Right. So that idea is still used today for a sign of authority. Right. If I walk in at my house wearing my shoes, my wife's gonna get mad at me because it's not my house; it's her house. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. No, but you see, we still have that same idea where if this is not our place, if we don't have authority here, do we wear our shoes? No, it's kind of disrespectful, right? Same thing here. This land, that wherever Moses was, that's God's land. You take off your shoes.
So practice over there in East.
Yeah, that's true.
If you go to India,
That's why they threw the shoe at Bush
yeah.
whenever he was speaking. They threw the sandal at Bush, and they said you have no authority here.
I know if you go to India and you're like a lower class, like a high class region, you're not allowed to wear your shoes.
Oh wow, I didn't know that.
Shoes. You can't sit on any chairs.
Wow.
So they still practice this stuff.
Oh, that's interesting. Somebody, go ahead. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's just an authority respect thing, right? All right, so God is saying that the ground belongs to God, not Moses. All right, Moses has no authority there. People who would also not wear sandals when approaching a king. So was Moses approaching a king?
Yes.
Yeah, he was. So we can see that same practice. So let me move on to verse 7. Then the Lord said, I have surely seen the affliction of my people who are in Egypt and have heard their cry because of their taskmasters. I know their sufferings, and I have come down to deliver them out of the hand of Egyptians, to bring them up out of the land to a good and broad land, a land flowing with milk and honey. Y'all ever heard that before? Flowing with milk and honey? Yeah, we're going to talk about that, I promise. Okay. Also, did you know that Egypt was also called the land flowing with milk and honey? What does that represent? What do you think? What'd you say?
Well, that's what they said.
No, not necessarily. You're stretching. You're trying to put your arm around Neto. That's funny. Go ahead, Marcus. Fertility. Yeah, prosperity, a prosperous land. Okay. So, look at honey. To the place of the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Amorites, and the Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites. Now we know who live in the land. Right? Currently living in the land that rightfully belonged to Israel. Okay. All right, and now behold, the cry of the people of Israel has come to me, and I have also seen the oppression with which the Egyptians oppress them. Come, I will send you to Pharaoh, that you might bring my people, the children of Israel, okay, out of Egypt. I'm on the right page, right? Okay, I'm just making sure. All right, but Moses said to God, who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and bring the children out of Egypt, children of Israel out of Egypt? He said, but I will be with you. And this shall be the sign for you that I have sent you, and when you have brought the people out of Egypt, you shall serve God on this mountain. What mountain is he at? Horeb. What mountain do they go to after the Exodus? Sinai. Are they the same?
Yes.
Yes. All right. Then Moses said to God, remember, they're having this dialogue, okay? The bush is still on fire. Okay. Then Moses said to God, if I come to the people of Israel and say to them, the Lord of your fathers has sent me to you, and they ask me, what is his name? What shall I say to them? God said to Moses, I am who I am. And he said, say this to the people of Israel, I am has sent me to you. God also said to Moses, say this to the people of Israel, the Lord, the Lord, the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob, has sent me to you. This is my name forever, and thus I am to be remembered throughout generations. Go and gather the elders of Israel together and say to them, the Lord, the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, of Isaac, and of Jacob, has appeared to me, saying, I have observed you, and what has been done to you in Egypt, and I've observed you and what has happened to you in Egypt. And I promise I will bring you out of the affliction of Egypt to the land of the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Amorites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, the Jebusites, a land flowing with milk and honey. That's a mouthful. Okay? But this really establishes God's identity, right? because we see who is in covenant with him. Like, he continuously calls himself the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Okay, that's important. All right, let's talk about milk and honey. Okay, so it's using descriptive language naturally. Okay, it describes the fertility or prosperity of a land. All right, but also it's not cow milk. Okay, it's not cow milk.
Yeah, so why is the milk kind of like brown?
Well, I don't know. So listen. It's really hard to find. It's hard to find a correct picture with dates. Okay, because a lot of times when you think of milk and honey, you think of bees' honey, right? But that's not correct. It was date honey. It was not bees' honey. So I tried to find the one that implied at least the honey, and then the milk. All the other milk was white, and this one was off. So I was like, maybe that's goat milk. I don't know. So I picked it. But yeah, that's Shutterstock.com. Ask them. So it's most likely goat milk. Okay. Because it produced twice as much as sheep. Goats produce twice as much milk as sheep. Okay. All right, but honey, no, it was not from bees. It was from dates or grapes. Okay, it was like a syrup. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, me neither. I didn't know that. According to the Zondervan Illustrated Bible Commentary, there is. Yeah, which is really interesting. I do kind of want to try. Maybe it's just wine. Maybe. I don't know. Thick wine, maybe. I don't know. Yeah, but wine's delicious. Anyways, it depends on the wine. All right, moving on. So, what is milk and honey? What does it describe? Prosperity. Okay, and fertility in the land. All right. Did I already? Okay. All right, and they will listen to your voice. So, continuing on the conversation, God's telling Moses, and they will listen to your voice, and you and the elders of Israel shall go to the king of Egypt and say to him, the Lord, the God of the Hebrews, has met with us. And now, please let us go a 3 days journey into the wilderness that we may sacrifice to the Lord our God. Y'all remember which animal is sacrificed during the Passover?
Lamb.
The lamb. Neto. And what animals were like really important to the Egyptians? A lot of animals, right? Including the lamb. Okay, so if they go into the land and sacrifice a lamb in Egypt, would they like that very much? No, that would probably upset them very much. So keep that in mind whenever he says to go on 3 days journey into the wilderness to sacrifice, because what we do, what happens is to test detestable. Okay, remember that. You need that context. Dun, dun. Water bottle in there by any chance? If not, there are some in that closet. Oh, is there one? There's one right here. I got it. Yep. Hey, buddy. It's so cute. I have no idea where we are.
Sacrifice.
So,
Lambs.
oh yeah, so we need that context whenever we continue reading why it's such a big deal that they leave. Okay? Sacrifice to the Lord our God. But I know that the king of Egypt will not let you go unless compelled by a mighty hand. This is important too, because they thought of the Pharaoh as a mighty arm. Okay, we did a little word study for the word Bereshit the first day that we started this. And in the ways you can manipulate the word, you could also see mighty arm, strong arm. Okay, that's important because God humiliates Pharaoh. Humiliates him first in the first sign, which we'll talk about, the snake and the staff. Okay, because the staff represented the authority of Pharaoh, and the snake actually represented Pharaoh. So the authority of Pharaoh is completely in the hands of God. Okay, so he completely humiliates him. But remember that the strong arm is also used to describe God, and also in this time to also describe Pharaoh. Okay, just remember that. Mighty hand. So I will stretch out my hand and strike Egypt with all the wonders that I will do in it. After that he will let you go. And I will give this people favor in the sight of the Egyptians. And when you go, you shall not go empty. But each woman shall ask of her neighbor and any woman who lives in her house for silver, gold, jewelry, and for clothing. You shall put them on your sons and on your daughters. So you shall plunder the Egyptians. You know what plunder means?
Take advantage of?
Steal.
Steal, right? To take, right? I'm gonna, like, if I invade something, I'm gonna plunder and I'm gonna take everything. Okay, exploit.
Another word?
No.
Okay, so
Yes.
that ties in again with the water judgment. Like I said,
Yeah,
if I accuse
exactly.
you, and you live, now I have to give you all my stuff.
Exactly, that's true. That's true. All right, so also it's important because Pharaoh put himself in divine judgment and killed the sons of Israel, and then what does God do directly back to Egypt? Right, kills their firstborn, because Israel is God's firstborn. That's what He describes. So, tooth for tooth, right? So, but legally, right? And it's using the language they had, using the Nile. All right, let's review. Why would God tell Moses to take off his sandals?
It's Holy Land.
Is this holy ground? Yes. Okay. Did Moses have authority on that land?
No.
No. Okay. Why? Nope. Wrong question. Would they use?
Would they used to?
Used to, yeah.
Would they used to approach? Would they approach the king with shoes on? No. I don't know why I couldn't come up with the question. What milk is most likely in mind? When goat milk. Why? How much more milk can it produce more than goats?
Twice.
No, than sheep. Sorry, goat twice as much as sheep. Okay. What kind of honey?
They
Dates.
Or
grapes.
grapes, according to Zondervan. Yes. All right. Chapter 4. Let's move on to chapter 4. We got. Oh boy, I don't know if we'll be able to finish. I actually been surprised that we're taking this long. Okay. And then Moses answered, "But behold, they will not believe me or listen to my voice, for they will say, 'The Lord did not appear to you.' The Lord said to him, what is that in your hand?" And he says, "A staff." What does staff represent?
Authority.
Authority. Yes, thank you. And he said, "Throw it on the ground." So he threw it on the ground, and it became a serpent. And Moses ran from it. But the Lord said to Moses, "Put out your hand and catch it by the tail." So he put out his hand and caught it, and it became a staff in his hand. Okay, this knowing what I know now, that's crazy. That they may believe that the Lord, the God of their fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob, has appeared to you. Again, the Lord said to him, "Put your hand inside your cloak." And he put his hand inside his cloak, and when he took it up, you know what I just saw? What kind of cloak did he have? Probably a long robe. Yeah, that's good. So, put your hand inside your cloak. And he put his hand inside his cloak, and when he took it up, behold, his hands was leprous. Leprosy, I'm just going to tell you now in case we don't get to it. Leprosy is, in Scripture, it's typically one of the punishments for pride. Okay, just keep in mind. And who's prideful right now? Pharaoh. Okay, so he's basically saying, hey, leprosy, don't forget. Sorry. And then God said, "Put your hand back into your cloak." And he put his hand back inside his cloak, and when he took it out, it was restored. All right, let's move on. No. Wait, is that? Yeah, okay. If they will not believe you, God said, or listen to the first sign, they may believe the latter sign. What does latter mean? Second, or last in this case, yeah. So in this case, it's last. Well, actually, it means last. It's last. Means last. Because former is first, latter. All right. If they will not believe even those two signs or listen to your voice, you shall take some water from the Nile and pour it on the dry ground. When the water that you shall take from the Nile will become blood on the dry ground. Remember what the Nile meant to you. Okay, it's very important. I need caffeine because my mind is like, all over the place. All right. But Moses said to the Lord, "Oh, my Lord, I am not eloquent either in the past or since you have spoken to your servant, but I am slow of speech and of tongue." Yesterday, Rico was telling me about how it's not even about speech. It's not even about his speaking. Okay, it was more about his ability to carry out these duties. Okay, I'm paraphrasing. There's obviously a lot more details with Rico, but that's like the condensed version that I can give you today. Okay. Then the Lord said to him, "Who has made man's mouth? Who makes him mute or deaf or seeing or blind? It is not I, the Lord. Now therefore go, and I will be with your mouth and teach you what you will speak." Again, you need to remember that Moses is a type and shadow of the Messiah. Okay, I'm going to tie this all together in Deuteronomy 18:18. Okay. Where am I? Then the anger of the Lord was kindled against Moses. Oh, no, because Moses says, please send someone else. Then the anger of the Lord was kindled against Moses, and he said, it's kind of funny, he says kindled because the bush is on fire. Okay. Kindled against Moses, and he said, is there not Aaron, your brother, the Levite? That's important. I know that he can speak well. Behold, he is coming out to meet you, and when he sees you, he will be glad in his heart. You shall speak to him and put the words in his mouth, and I will be with your mouth and with his mouth, and will teach you both what to do. He shall speak for you to the people, and he shall be your mouth, and you shall be as God to him. And take in your hand this staff, which you shall do the signs. Oh, man, so much to unpack here. It's ridiculous. One thing, actually, I hope I could finish because I'm going to tie it all together. Okay? If Rico could take like 10 extra minutes, that would be awesome. So, staff to serpent. We need to talk about these signs, okay, and what they mean to Pharaoh and to Egypt. Staff to serpent, okay, tale of Egyptian magic. We have to talk about that. The serpent could be hypnotized. This is a tale, okay? T-A-L-E, not T-A-I-L, okay? A tale of Egyptian magic. The serpent could be hypnotized and become rigid, and then could be picked up from the tail, okay? According to Egyptian magic. All right. The sign given to Moses seemed to be the reversal of this magic. Okay, he's saying, no, it's not Egyptian magic at all. I have authority to do this. Okay, but a lot of time the Egyptian magicians were sleazy. Okay, you know they could actually do a couple of they could actually do. They were obviously it was like sleight of hand stuff. Okay, but they could actually do some of the signs. Okay, so they're very they're like Chris Angel type stuff, right? That might be too old for y'all. I don't know. Okay. But also recall the staff equals what? Authority. And snake represents? Pharaoh. So what's happening right now, if you look at like the imagery that's going on, the authority of Pharaoh, the Pharaoh, is entirely up to God. Because snake represents Pharaoh and the staff represents authority.
You know, on his crown.
Yeah, it had the snake. Yeah. Let's keep going to the leper skin. Okay. Leper skin, the perceived as punishment for hubris. Have y'all watched The Chosen at all? Y'all remember Nathaniel whenever he's in the bar and he talks about like his friend that died, right? And then he's like, and the bartender was like, "How did he die?" He says hubris, or he said hubris. That means pride, right? And then he goes, "Obviously, it's me. Hello." Yeah. So pride is hubris. Leprosy was a punishment for pride. Okay, in Scripture. But this also demonstrates God's intent for the punishment of Pharaoh. Why? Because he's so prideful. He's so stubborn, right? Okay. Egyptians thought of it as a punishment from the gods. So also this is important because it shows that God has authority over their gods. That's important too, right? If they perceive as a punishment coming from the gods, and this guy just puts his hand in his robe, and they see that he has leprosy, he's like, oh my gosh, that's crazy. And it shows that God has the authority over the punishment that their gods had authority over. Okay? So then we see bloody water. Remember, the Nile represented the prosperity in Egypt. I didn't mean to get so close to her face like that. So the Nile is prosperity in Egypt. You have to remember that. Okay, it shows God's control over the prosperity of Egypt. At least when Joseph was in charge, God gave him heads up. Okay, because we talked about that with the sins of the brothers, all that stuff. Okay, but this also shows God's authority over their God happy too, right? Because they thought that the Nile was the personification of that God. All right. So move on. You shall be as God to him. Remember what I told you. Moses is a type and shadow of the Messiah. Okay, so there's a lot of similarities between Moses and the Messiah. Okay. Now, if you're as God to somebody, are you God? No. That's important to know. Okay. So this will become more apparent whenever we do connect it all with Deuteronomy 18:18. All right. So was Moses God? No. What did Moses represent? God. He was his spokesperson. Okay. By carrying the staff, what did Moses actually carry? The authority of God. Right? Moses carries the authority of God, represents God, is a mouthpiece for God. Can Moses say anything that God didn't tell him to? No. He can do something that God didn't tell him, which strike the rock, which messes everything up. But we'll talk about that later. So, let's continue. Okay, because oops. Moses went back to Jethro, his father-in-law, and said, that's close, and said to him, please let me go back to my brothers in Egypt to see whether they are still alive. Remember, Jacob also asked permission to leave. He has to. Okay. And Jethro said to Moses, go in peace. Wow. No heartache, no 6 more years of work for stuff, right? Go in peace. And the Lord said to Moses in Midian, go back to Egypt, for all the men who are seeking your life are dead. So Moses took his wife and his sons and had them ride on a donkey and went back to the land of Egypt. And Moses took the staff of God in his hand. Okay, remember, it's called the staff of God now. Whose authority did he carry? God's. Okay? Moses took the staff of God in his hands. And the Lord said to Moses, when you go back to Egypt, see that you do before Pharaoh all the miracles that I have put in your power. So, does Moses himself have the power to do so?
Nope.
Who gave him the power to do the miracles? God. All right, now that we talked about that, good. All right, but I will harden his heart, that he will not let his people go. Then you shall say to Pharaoh, thus says the Lord, Israel is my firstborn son. And I say to you, let my son go, that he may serve me. If you refuse to let him go behold, I will kill your firstborn son. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about hardening the heart, okay? It represents stubbornness, too. Okay, hardening of the heart. If you have a hard heart, it can represent pride, stubbornness, okay? Perseverance, right? Stuff like that. But in the Egyptian culture, in their way of thinking, this is also a picture over here. I don't know if can you see it over here? This right here on the bottom right, that's a feather. And this is a heart. If the heart was light, you go to the afterlife. If the heart was heavy or hard, you would go to the underworld or just disappear. So that's a huge claim that God's saying. He goes, no, he's going to go to the underworld, okay? Basically, that's what he's saying. All right. So, let's continue reading. At a lodging place on the way, the Lord met him and sought to put him to death. Okay, so who does God want to put to death? Moses. Why? Can you guess without reading ahead? No, stop. Without reading ahead. Go ahead.
Well, because he didn't circumcise his little kid.
Exactly. Because he did not circumcise his son. Are we supposed to circumcise? Yes. Okay, especially in that time. All right. Then Zipporah, who's Zipporah? His wife, took a flint. A flint knife is oftentimes what was used to do circumcision, and cut off her son's foreskin and touched Moses' feet with it, and said, surely you are a bridegroom of blood to me. We're going to talk about that next year. Okay? So he let him alone. God let Moses alone, okay? It was then that she said, you are a bridegroom of blood because of the circumcision. The Lord said to Aaron, go into the wilderness to meet Moses. So he went and met him at the mountain of God. What's the mountain of God? Horeb, Sinai, okay? Equal sign, same thing. And kissed him. And Moses told Aaron all the words of the Lord with which he had sent him to speak, and all the signs that he had commanded him to do. Then Moses and Aaron went and gathered together all the elders of the people of Israel. Remember, elders held like really high authority, okay? And now it's not like nowadays where we say respect your elders and we don't. Like, that's actually what they did, all right? So, hey, it's... But come, oh, scared me. I thought you were going to the little boy. Okay. So Moses and Aaron went and gathered together all the elders of the people. Aaron spoke all the words that the Lord had spoken to Moses, and did the signs in the sight of the people. And the people believed. And when they heard that the Lord had visited the people of Israel, and that he had seen their affliction, they bowed their heads in worship. Let me ask you a question. Did anything stick out to you in verse 31? Anything? So who approached the elders? Aaron and Moses, right? Read verse 31 again. What does it say? And the people believed. And when they heard that the Lord had visited the people of Israel? Who visited the people of Israel? Moses and Aaron. So again, we had to talk about the type and shout of Messiah. Okay? It's as if the Lord had visited them. But obviously it wasn't like God himself, right? But his representatives came, and they were able to see the Lord, that the Lord visited the people based on them. Okay? All right. So let's do review questions. Oh my gosh. What did the serpent represent? Pharaoh, yes. What did the staff represent? Authority. Okay. What was the main message behind the sign of the staff and the serpent?
God had authority over Pharaoh's.
Yeah. Wow. You're paying attention. Yeah. All right. What punishment was typical of Hebrews?
Leprosy.
Leprosy. Good. Why was Moses as God to Pharaoh and Aaron?
He was a royal servant.
Yeah.
He was a representative.
Yeah. He's a representative of God. God gave Moses the words to speak. God gave Moses the miracles to do. Okay. And he commanded Moses. Okay. All right. What was the significance of hardening Pharaoh's heart?
It meant that he was going to go back.
Well, that's a different talk, different time. All right. Yeah, underworld. In their terms, he would, in their equivalent. Yeah. Yeah. So let's go on to chapter 5. Afterward, I'm going to try to get through this because I'm really excited about Deuteronomy 18:18. Afterward, Moses and Aaron went and said to Pharaoh, "Thus says the Lord, the God of Israel, let my people go, and that may hold a feast to me in the wilderness." What feast? Passover. Good, Passover. But Pharaoh said, "Who is the Lord that I should obey his voice and let Israel go? I do not know the Lord," obviously, okay? "And moreover, I will not let Israel go." We talked about Pharaoh not knowing Joseph. What did Joseph stand for? Who did he serve? The Lord. If the Pharaoh does not know the Lord, he does not know righteousness. He does not know justice, okay? "I will not let Israel go." Then they said, "The God of the Hebrews has met with us. Please let us go a 3 days' journey into the wilderness, that we may sacrifice to the Lord our God, lest he fall upon us with pestilence or with the sword." But the king of Egypt said to them, "Moses and Aaron, why do you take the people away from their work? Get back to your burdens." Okay, there you go again with the laziness, right? I remember, people have told me, because I do Sabbath, I'm lazy. I don't want to work on Friday night. I'm like, who wants to work on Friday night anyways, first of all? Okay? Yeah, it's like, come on. All right? Get back to the burdens. And Pharaoh said, "Behold, the people of the land are now many, and you make them rest from their burdens." Okay, he's calling them lazy. The same day Pharaoh commanded the taskmasters of the people and their foremen, "You shall no longer give the people straw to make bricks, as in the past. Let them go get the stuff themselves." Okay. Actually, I don't have any points for chapter 5. I just realized. But I will read it because we have to read it. Okay. "But the number of bricks that they made in the past you shall impose on them," so they have to keep the same number of bricks. But now they don't have the materials. They have to go get it themselves. Okay. "You shall by no means reduce it, for they are idle." They are lazy. Okay. "Therefore they cry." Are they lazy actually? No. Okay. "Therefore they cry, let us go and offer sacrifice to our God. Let heavy work be laid on the men, that they may labor at it and pay no regard for lying words." He thinks they're lying, all right? So the taskmasters and the foremen of God went out and said to the people, "Thus says Pharaoh, I will not give you straw. Go and get your straw yourselves, wherever you can find it, but your work will not be reduced in the least." So the people were scattered throughout the land of Egypt. And you know what I really want to do? I want to do a study on the land, like how far they would have to go to get straw and stuff. That would be really cool. "But you throughout the land of Egypt to gather stubble for straw. The taskmasters were urgent, saying, 'Complete your work, your daily task each day,' and when there was straw. And the foremen of the people of Israel, whom Pharaoh's taskmasters had set over them, were beaten and were asked, 'Why have you not done all your task of making bricks today and yesterday as in the past?'" That would be a good question to ask if you want to get smacked. Which one is it? Right here. "Then the foreman of the people of Israel came and cried to Pharaoh, 'Why do you treat your servants like this? No straw is given to your servants, yet they say to us, "Make bricks." And behold, your servants are beaten. But the fault is in your own people.' And he said, 'You are idle, you are lazy. That is why you say, "Let us go and sacrifice to the Lord." Now go and work. All right? No straw will be given to you. You must still deliver the same number of bricks." The foreman of the people of Israel saw that they were in trouble when they said, "You shall by no means reduce your number of bricks, your daily task each day." They met Moses. I wonder what the punishment would be. Anyways, they met Moses and Aaron, who were waiting for them as they came out from Pharaoh. Okay, so they were going to meet Pharaoh, and then they just ran into each other. And they said to them, "The Lord look on you and judge." It's funny. "Because you have made us stink in the sight of Pharaoh and his servants, and you have put a sword in their hand to kill us." Then Moses turned to the Lord and said, "O Lord, why have you done evil to this people? Why did you ever send me? For since I came to Pharaoh to speak in your name, he has done evil to all of his people, and you have not delivered your people at all." All right, it finally ends with 6:1. Okay, "But the Lord said to Moses, now you shall see what I will do to Pharaoh. For with a strong hand he will send them out, and with a strong hand he will drive them out of this land, of his land." Okay, so let's conclude everything. Moses is a type and shadow of whom? Messiah. How do we know that?
Deuteronomy 18:18.
I've been talking about it all night. Okay, I'm so excited. I cannot wait. Okay, but first we have to talk about Moses. Okay, we know the Messiah. We've probably grown up in a Christian church. That's all you hear. Okay, you probably don't hear this. Most of you probably have. Okay, but this is going to be important. Okay, because Moses in this portion, from what we've read, he's adopted into royalty. Tell me, in the New Testament, Joseph, who's he related to? King David. Does Joseph adopt Jesus? You sure? Yes, he does, right? He has to. He has to adopt him. Okay. God chose him to be his mouthpiece. Tell me, who does that also sound like? The Messiah. Right, sorry, yeah, Joseph, like Yeshua's adopted dad, yeah. So, who's also God's mouthpiece on earth? Aaron, yes, but first Moses, okay? But the Messiah is going to be the mouthpiece of God, okay? And we're going to see that. Okay, so first it was Moses to be the mouthpiece, but Moses was like, yeet, I'm not interested. So then it's Aaron. Okay, but Moses still has that position. All right? God chose him to do signs. Tell me, who also did miracles? Yeshua. God chose him to set his people free from slavery. Wow, that's interesting, right? Okay, let's read Deuteronomy 18:18. I'm just itching for this. Okay? So Deuteronomy 18:18. "I will raise up for them a prophet like you." Like whom? Like Moses. "I will raise up for them a prophet like Moses from among their brothers. I will put my words in his mouth, and he shall speak to them all that I command him." I oftentimes ask my students, I said, listen, can God's word ever change? No, it can't. It cannot. Does that make God a liar if it does? Yes. So can Yeshua say anything different than what's already written in the Torah?
No.
No. Then how come a lot of people think he did? Makes no sense. Okay? So how do you know that this is about the Messiah? Remember we talked about the Aleph Tav, right? And how like a lot of times in the Old Testament, because it's not really translatable to English. Okay, we lose that if we don't read the Hebrew. But it also does have grammatical function. Okay, but we read a lot. Remember the first, unfortunately a lot of you weren't there. Okay, but whenever we did our first teaching on Bereshit, I did a whole word study on the Aleph Tav and what it meant. And if you don't already know, it also represents the Shekhinah, okay, the Garden of Israel, the Messiah. Okay, so whenever you see Aleph Tav embedded in something like this, it's prophetic for the Messiah. You have to look at it that way. So we do know who's him, the Messiah. So we could read it like this: "I will raise up for them," Israel, "a prophet like Moses from among their brothers. And I will put my words in the Messiah's mouth, and the Messiah shall speak to them all that I command the Messiah." Okay, this is a picture of the Aleph Tav. Okay, you know Hebrew? It was read that way, okay. This is the Lexington Hebrew Bible. Okay, Deuteronomy 18:18. You see how this is just perfectly sitting there? It's not connected to anything. That's whenever you have to look at the verse in English, or Spanish, whatever your first language is, and read it. Because a lot of times it's going to be prophetic for the Messiah. Okay? So, let's tie it all together, okay? So, in this portion, we see God will be his mouth and teach him what to speak. Moses. What does God do with the Messiah? He gives him what to speak. We see that in Deuteronomy 18:18. That's exactly what it says. Okay, so can the Messiah do anything different than what's already established in the Torah? No. Otherwise, that makes who a liar? God. All right? Or whoever it is. All right? Exodus 4:21, we see that God gave Moses power to do certain miracles. Right? That's interesting. Because every time Yeshua did a miracle, who did he give credit to? Yeah, God, not himself. God. Okay. Exodus 4:31. By Moses visiting, they knew that the Lord had visited and seen their affliction. So just the mere presence of Moses, they knew that the Lord visited them. Just being in the mere presence of Yeshua, if he's on earth, like, don't you think you would understand that, hey, the Lord is with us? Okay. That concludes today. Okay. Moses is a huge, actually probably, arguably, one of the biggest types and shadows of the Messiah. Okay. He frees his people. He frees God's people. Okay. Leads them. Another big one, which we'll read in Deuteronomy. Sorry, I'm just going to spoil it now. Who brings the covenant down from the Mount Sinai? Moses. Who's the mediator of the new covenant? Yeshua. You see, there's a huge type and shadow here going on that we miss without looking into the context, right? Without doing word studies, we wouldn't see that all the time. We wouldn't understand. We would still sit there scratching our head like, what prophet is being talked about in Deuteronomy 18:18, right? But if you understand that Moses is a type of shadow of the Messiah, and you do a Hebrew word study, you would see that all the top of speck in the face. It's like it's right there, right? That concludes today. I'm so surprised. We have 2 minutes until 7:30, and Rico's talking, so we have like 12. Okay. Any questions so far?